Okay, so I have a feeling there are going to be a lot of angry comments on this video, but let's jump into it anyways. If you know me, I've always been someone who is super against what we call identity politics. I call it out at every turn for the cancer that it is to our political discourse.
Assume that you're a cisgender straight woman because you obviously
that's really true.
and that you probably haven't ever been raped. Either.
I actually identify
you
as an
sound
attack helicopter, so it's really
to me,
offensive.
You sound like you're speaking from a very privileged point of view here.
I know that you are. You're actually the only woman who's actually featured. Because guess what? It's a bunch of dudes. And I do not appreciate that.
Did you just call me a woman? I'm legally a man.
Are you?
Yes.
But I've also recently realized that maybe calling it identity politics can cause for some confusion. Because now, every single time I bring up the term identity in a political context, everyone's SJW alarm goes off, and in most cases I don't think I'm wrong to bring identity into these conversations, as identity simply refers to the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. So I really do think it is worth jumping into this topic again. Identity politics, of course, has been defined as a tendency for people of a particular religion, race, social background, etc. to form exclusive political alliances, moving away from traditional broad-based party politics. In other words, instead of dividing us politically in terms of left, right, progressive, or libertarian, identity politics divides people's political goals and interests in terms of their social group status, like their race or their gender. To me, this sounds kind of more like social group politics or group membership politics, but whatever anyone wants to call it, modern-day identity politics has become an intellectually corrupt political practice. Not only have we allowed someone's skin color or gender to take precedent over the content of their character, but we have legitimized the use of group membership as a political argument. Ad hominem attacks like, "You're fucking a white male!" have become commonplace counter-arguments in today's political discourse. And a kind of inverse ad hominem has also infected political discussion. So along with using someone's oppressor group status to invalidate their argument, people now also use their oppressed group status to bolster their own argument.
Haven't had a woman to be president yet, so we need to have a woman to be president. Being a woman running for president. Having the first woman president.
Be a woman president of the United States of America. If you vote for somebody on the merits, one of my merits is I'm a woman.
Just how many times can you think of where you've heard someone start a political discussion with, "as a woman, as a Muslim, as a gay, biracial, trans, African unicorn kin," as if this somehow makes the next thing they're going to say more important or more accurate. Identity politics in the form of social group membership and oppression Olympics have done nothing but divide our society along attributes that have nothing to do with the realm of ideas, which is where political discourse should take place in. It's balkanized our world into groups that harbor resentment toward each other, whether it be Black Lives Matter movement subverting race relations, or third wave feminism sabotaging gender relations. Identity politics, as we know it today, does not seek to move us forward as a society. It seeks to fragment, deconstruct, and cannibalize us. Luckily, as of late, more and more people are abandoning the old social justice ways of judging every conversation using skin color or gender. In fact, most liberals would apply their loss in the 2016 election to their obsession with identity politics. Even super crazy far-left liberals like Bernie Sanders came out and stated that it's time for the country to progress beyond identity politics movements. So I really do think it's safe to say that it's not a winning ideology right now. But this does bring me back to my points at the beginning of this video. As we move away from this destructive and divisive habit, should we abandon the concept of identity in political discourse altogether? Is identity politics of every single kind divisive and destructive rather than unifying and productive? Identity politics of any form is tribalistic and collectivist by nature. It is corruptible for those very reasons. To quote someone from a random Sam Harris subreddit, identity politics is bad because it teaches people to identify themselves and their interests based on their group identity or affiliation, which leads to tribal thinking, where truth is subordinate to the interests of the group, and independent thought is substituted for mindless adherence to ideology. This observation is pretty difficult to argue with. Collectivist thinking of any form risks a hive mind mentality that subverts truth. But at the same time, humans are social creatures by nature. We think in terms of groups, we act as groups, and at the end of the day, all politics is group politics. The only way for political movements to occur, let alone be effective, is to unite people by some sort of common trait. Otherwise, we'll never get anything done. It may very well be that the only rational path is a pure individualist search for truth, but politics by its very nature is an effort to advance the interests of a defined group, whether it be the citizens of a country, members of a political party, or members of a certain race. So, in a sense, all politics is collectivist and all politics is identity politics. And treating politics as a search for some transcendental universal truth is just not practical either. Politics is not a matter of saying Group X is simply more correct or more truthful than Group Y, but rather saying Group X is not the same as Group Y and therefore they have different interests. Therefore, the absolutist rejection of any and all identity politics results in the rejection of politics altogether, which is why staunchly individualist libertarian types have such a hard time growing their movement beyond obscure corners of the internet. So if you want to have any real impact in the political sphere, the question should not be a matter of rejecting identity politics, but rejecting the wrong kind of identity politics, the divisive and destructive kind, and aim instead for a unifying identity that pushes our society forward. Identities based on levels of oppression are not identities worth spending tons of resources preserving or basing political action around. They're not ones that have created civilizations. Quite the contrary, these identities seek to destroy them. I mean, what society has ever moved forward with feminist identity politics that finds the womb itself to be inherently patriarchal? That society is quite literally incapable of surviving. So instead of focusing on that crazy, we should aim to preserve identities that have held societies together, promoted social cohesion, and managed to hand each individual a meaningful position in the larger social macrocosm. These identities being identities of culture. For the past few decades, we have been dividing society into subgroups on the basis of attributes like gender and sexuality, or uniting ourselves along left-right party lines. And there are a lot of people that want to keep things that way because it is good for business and politics for them. But the reality is, these things that we have put so much weight on in modern day are only a small fraction of what brings meaning and structure to our lives. Cultural identity goes much deeper than skin color or gender. It brings members of a society together on the basis of shared network of ideas and behaviors in the form of values and customs that have been meticulously constructed and perfected over millennia, and have been ingrained in the minds of people for generations through families and communities passing them on. And if only cultural transmission was as easy as sprinkling some European holy water onto non-Western foreigners, we'd be able to unite the world under the same cultural identity. But unfortunately, it is not that simple. Unfortunately, centuries of fighting for individual liberty, secular democracy, and civil rights dating all the way back to the Magna Carta in the 13th century are not transmitted as soon as someone steps onto American or European soil. In fact, in our world of mass immigration with no assimilation, people tend to transmit their deeply ingrained identity to the new country they move to, rather than adopt the cultural identity of that country, fragmenting society even further into enclaves. And these things are worth talking about, and some of these identities really are worth preserving for the sake of the future of first world democracies. Because if you abandon the family traditions, the customs, and the values that have created complex societies, societies that create art, architecture, better standards of living, scientific achievement, and exploration, well, you abandon the nation and its love of freedom and democracy itself. And I can assure you that no magic dirt or pencil-pushing bureaucrats can reverse that damage. So, in conclusion, is identity politics inherently evil? Well, at its worst, it is a necessary evil. At its best, it's not evil at all, because political action on the basis of cultural identity may not only be the best means of moving forward as a society, but it may be the only means of achieving individual and societal prosperity. Let me know what you think, though, because this is something I have been mulling over for a long while, and I would love to see some rebuttals or maybe some expansion on the thoughts that I have shared. And as usual, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.